Hello, welcome to our webinar, How to Increase Your Profitability and RMR Without Even Trying. Today we have with us Dave Sheffy from Napco Security Technologies. Dave has 37 years of industry experience and is currently the Senior Vice President of Sales for the Northern U.S. and Canada. Mr. Sheffy also spent 10 years in distribution with Alarm Supply, USCO, which later became Arias. In today's webinar, you will learn how using StarLink Residential and Commercial Radios can help you earn more revenue, drive down installation costs, while giving your valued customers the benefit of upgrading to today's latest technology, such as remote interactive services and saving generated by the elimination of expensive POTs lines. My name is Julie Rolls. I'm the training manager with PSA, and I will be moderating today's call. I have just a few quick housekeeping items before I hand it over to Dave. First, if you've not already done so, please mute yourself. If you have any questions throughout the course of this presentation, please type them into the chat panel, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. I will also be monitoring the chat should you run into any difficulties, and we'll do my best to get you back up and running. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Dave.
Hello, Julie. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank PSA for the chance to do this presentation. We want to talk a little bit today. There's a changing opportunity, a change of opportunity, I should say, for how we actually get our signals to the central station and the services that we provide our customers. And we give you the opportunity to increase profitability and RMR, and more importantly, to the sales process, help the customer save money, which kind of gets them over the initial hump. Very infrequently is an opportunity to go to a customer, eliminate costly phone lines, especially in a fire type application, where we can save the customer hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, and then extrapolate that to larger numbers of installations. So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit today about StarLink radios. And kind of the first thing that kind of goes to the heart of savings and profitability, all of our radios, which we have over 20 different radios today. We carry AT&T radios, Verizon radios. We've released the new CDMA radios, and all of our radios, they range from $100 to under $200 with the power supply and a metal cabinet. All of our radios have the option for any installation to receive $100 bounty or rebate, whichever you want to call it, for every radio installed. That $100 is applied to your new service up. If it's, let's just say hypothetically, $595, you'd actually get about a year and a half's worth of service for that $100. So it's a great way to buy a radio for $100 and get $100 back. So that is that the radio is actually free. You can find this information on our website. There's a form to fill out, and should you have any questions, I know there are a lot of people out there who have seen this before, and when we first started it, it was about replacing old 2G radios, and you had to have a SIM. Well, that's kind of gone out the window. It's for new installations, new construction, POTS lines elimination, literally anything that requires putting a radio in gives you the opportunity to apply for that $100 for the free radio. So that's certainly one thing. I just kind of laid it out here. Whether it's a CDMA or 3G, 4G, which AT&T, or an LTE, Verizon radio. Today, the radio, basic Berg radio, sells for about $99.95. A lot of our competitors are a little bit more, so there is a savings there as well. But if you had 500 radios that you were going to put on, say over a period of a year, and at a savings of from a competitor's radio, you could actually be saving over $65,000 a year in just radio cost. So that's something to consider. That applies to all of our radios, whether they're Berg radios, connected home radios, and fire radios, and also any product that we have that has a radio in it. I'm just going to show you here very quickly. We're going to go through a number of slides. The CDMA coverage area. This is the digital data coverage area. And the reason I'm talking about CDMA today, because we still provide CDMA radios. We have pre-registered all the SIMs. So some of the competitors to Starlink had SIM cards that you actually had to register. You can no longer do that after June. We pre-registered all these SIMs. You may say, why would you want to do that? Well, the reason we want to do that is there's a lot of this country that still does not have LTE coverage. So if you're in an area where LTE doesn't work yet, you'll still have an opportunity to put in a radio. Most of the other competitors no longer can sell CDMA radios. So there are parts. I just had a case in Jersey the other day. A gentleman wanted a CDMA, an LTE radio. He got his LTE radio. It didn't work in his location. He wound up putting a CDMA radio in. He could continue to do that because we continue to sell them. This is the 3.4G. And if you notice, we sell about 80% Verizon CDMA currently, compared to 20% AT&T. And you can see the map is a little different. And what it really comes down to is how it works in your area and what your preference is. Some people have a preference to AT&T. Some people have a preference to Verizon. Me, I'm looking for the radio that has the best coverage area, so that I'm not scrambling to find a product that works in a specific area. We have released the Berg, which is the black radio, in an LTE version. That is a Verizon certified LTE radio. LTE stands for long-term evolution. We will be releasing the white radio in the center, which is the Connect radio. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we'll be releasing that in about 45 days in LTE. And we have released the Soul Path version of the Fire radios in their various configurations, with power supply or without power supply, about 3 months ago. So we have LTE radios available so that you can put in the latest and the greatest product. LTE stands for long-term evolution. The point to that is that that's the next migration. We're migrating from CDMA and 3G, 4G to LTE. LTE is supposed to be somewhat future-proof, guaranteed through 2030. Some people say well beyond, and maybe even well beyond that, if they continue to keep that part of the network up and running. They're already working on 5G, but that's really for video and streaming data comparatively to machine-to-machine type stuff, which we do. LTE uses less power and has a shorter range than the previous 3G, 4Gs or CDMA products. So what you find is you'll see we have the two antennas, and those two antennas serve a significant purpose, giving us more reception capability and more range than a single antenna solution. And the reason we've done that is to continue to work in fringe areas like we've been previously. That's certainly been one of our claims to fame, is that our antenna coverage allows us to work in those fringe areas where other products don't work. LTE is not available yet everywhere. There are places in Wisconsin, places in New Jersey, places in areas where there are more contour to the landscape, where they may not necessarily have the towers available. Ultimately, there will be more LTE disseminated across the country, some of them even on power poles, so that we have greater penetration. Some of the things you may have heard about the sunsets. AT&T and Verizon are not allowing activations of the 3G, 4G, or CDMA after June. That's absolutely true. Many of the other manufacturers who you actually registered the SIM, you can no longer do that. So those radios are no longer useful. If the SIM hasn't been activated, you can't use the radio. What Napco has done is we've always pre-activated all of the SIMs from the factory. The benefit to that is that you don't have to be in a home area. You can be anywhere to, you're really literally just turning on the radio from a billing standpoint. The radio is already pre-activated. So it speeds the installation process, and it allows us to continue to sell CDMA and 3G, 4G radios well on through the end of the year. And what you see on this slide is GSM, the sunset is February 28, 2022. CDMA is December 31st, 2022. And of course, CDMA being the biggest part of our business, you're looking at about 4 years and 4 months until the sunset. Now, we don't know if they're going to extend those dates or not, as they have with other sunsets in the past, but right now, 4 years and 4 months. So by putting in an LTE radio, you're saying that you're not going to have to go back between now and that sunset period and replace that radio. Unless, of course, you have to put in a CDMA because LTE doesn't work there. Your LTE coverage map, you'll see that there in the east, there's some holes. They do show a lot of coverage here, but again, it's really about contour, and that the range for the LTE is not what the CDMA coverage or the 4G coverage was. So keep that in mind. And if you're in a rural area, it's going to be a little different than if you're in a major metropolitan area. I'm in Indianapolis right now, and I was talking to somebody yesterday who does a lot of radio installs, and they say they have a problem on the east side of Indianapolis without using an external antenna. So you have different things in different places, and you want to take the opportunity to test these radios before you start to deploy. It's universal, and this kind of just the slide depicts the radio communicating to the tower, which then communicates to the network operations center, which is our NOC. Our NOC is UL listed. That UL listed NOC forwards the signal to your central station, and your central station really looks at that signal just as if it was coming in via telephone line directly into the central station. They don't see that it's a cellular call. We do have the opportunity to send from the network operations center via an 800 line or IP. A lot of people are choosing IP today because IP is faster. It's also more cost effective, and you back up with an 800 line. Certainly something to consider. Our radios, and when I'm talking about some of these features, they're common to all of our radios. They're universal. They work with all panels that communicate in contact ID and full older 4.2 formats. So whether it's a legacy 4.2 format, we send full data contact ID. So any panel that's sending in those formats, we can send our information through down to your central station. Beyond that, we can also work with legacy product that simply has an output. We take an output to an input on the radio, an output to then sending basic general bird fire supervisory or bird fire panic type applications to the central. These radios work primary or backup. I know in some cases, some models only work primary. You have to buy a separate model for backup. Our radio works either as primary or backup, or in this case, there are also dual path radios that backup occurs via a second path. One of the things that makes our radios very unique is the fact that they have a superior antenna circuit design. And that circuit design is called signal boost technology. And it kind of sounds like in effect, it is a name that we've given it, but we have a very, very talented group of engineers at Napco. And what they've done is they've improved the antenna circuitry so that our radios work in those fringe areas. Our radios have a stronger signal. Our radios don't require a lot of external antennas. Matter of fact, you can ask a lot of people who use our radios that they don't often buy external antennas. And I am finding that more and more people, especially people who use radios, LTE radios that have a single antenna, find that they are now buying more external antennas than they used to. And those external antennas often cost more than the radio does itself. So it's something to consider. Again, if you're using a lot of external antennas, you may want to take a look at a Napco radio, because we're going to use less external antennas, which again reduces cost and increases profitability. Fastest and the easiest install. Literally 4 wires, 2 for power. We take power directly off the control panel, 2 for telco, and literally transmit. We capture the account number, capture the phone number. You could literally be done. What we also have on the radio is 3 diagnostic LEDs that you see through the case. One of those, the green LED in the center, being kind of the most important, that's your signal strength. You can take this radio out of the box, hook a battery to it, take it anywhere, and what you'll get is you'll get a accurate signal strength for that radio. Flashes between 1 and 8 times. If it's flashing 3 times or greater, you have a satisfactory signal strength. So it actually works as a good pre-installation tool. So it's always good to have one in the truck. These radios draw very little current. They draw about 71 mils in standby and 200 mils in activation. That's how we can put them on the control panels without creating any undue problems. We also, at 71 mils, eliminates the need for, in the fire case, and this should probably be in a little different place, with fire, we work on a 12 or 24 volt fire panel, and we don't have the need to use a power supply version, which requires us to have a dedicated AC circuit and potentially an enclosure over the transformer, which again reduces the cost of the installation. So it makes you more competitive when you're going out there to look for these opportunities to gain more reoccurring revenue by adding more accounts. The millions of fire systems that are out there that have 2 dedicated phone lines today is very large. And the opportunity to go out there and be aggressive and add reoccurring revenue, what we're doing is we're adding the revenue to your side and taking it away from the Verizons and the carriers, the AT&Ts, the carriers that are providing those POTS lines today. Additionally, we have Verizon and AT&T, who, and certainly Verizon has written the book on high security, encryption, and the security aspects of their network. And what you have is you have 128-bit encryption beyond that. So unlike many types of proprietary type communication systems that don't have the billions of dollars that's spent on the network to ensure the integrity of the network that Verizon and AT&T has spent, that's incredibly important, and not a lot of people talk about that. This just kind of, when I said earlier the Verizon literally writes the books on protecting networks from cyber breaches. They actually write the book, okay, that the government uses as an authority on security in this category. So certainly something to consider. Verizon and AT&T networks, and the billions of dollars that they spend on protecting those networks by comparison to a private proprietary network. One of the things that's important about the radio is all of our radios are over-the-air upgradable firmware. That means that if there's ever a problem, say there was a global problem, we could upgrade the radios over the air without the need of a tech to go to the site. You could actually upgrade a radio. Let's just say this is probably the only time that we've ever done that over the last few years, is to increase the number of features available on the Connect radios. You can at any point in time upgrade to the latest, greatest firmware in a radio to pick up potentially a feature or even correct a problem that may have occurred. All you have to do is download the new firmware to the radio. It takes less than a couple of minutes to do that. In the case of fire, you would want to have a technician on site to do that. Certainly, at any point in time, you have that opportunity. There have been other manufacturers which it took 20 minutes to upgrade the firmware. You had to be there to do it. You had to do it directly to the radio. If the radio communicated, it had the potential to turning into a brick. Other people have basically killed radios completely. Eliminating the need for a service role is incredibly important, and reducing the cost of fixing something down the road is incredibly important. So you can't discount that fact. I'm going to talk a little bit about the intrusional radios first, and all of those features that we just talked about pertain to these radios. You see the radio on the left, which is the LTE. We call it an LTE-V for Verizon. The CDMA, which we continue to sell, and the GSM 3G, 4G AT&T version. The AT&T version is available in Canada and works incredibly well up there. And we offer the same rebate bounty in Canada that we offer here in the States, except it's actually done in Canadian dollars. The radio itself, all three of those radios that I just depicted, are incredibly affordable. They all sell for $99.95, and they all do essentially the same thing. They all have the same features. They all have the same antenna capability, the signal boost technology, whether they're AT&T or they're Verizon. Again, that's just a personal preference. Again, we're universal. We work on all control panels. We have a variety of supervision service plans. The service plan with unlimited signals, unlimited uploads and downloads to a Napco panel, a weekly check-in typically is about $5.95, and we have other service plans which may include a daily service plan with unlimited signals, which is slightly more. And if you're looking, some people wanted a daily plan, so we made one available. My suggestion is to use a weekly plan and do a daily test timer, and unlimited signals are included. So it's just a little bit more cost-effective way, and you're actually doing a full daily test to the central station. As I mentioned before, we do dialer capture. So when you transmit, we're capturing, and the radio is set up to capture out of the box. So it captures the account number and the phone number. If that's how you're going to send it, it's your panel. You were putting the radio online for the first time. You captured that information, and that's where you're sending it. literally you're done. If you were using a panel that you may be taking over, then you're going to capture that information. You're going to go in and you're going to reprogram an account number and reprogram your own central station's either phone number or IP address, and then download that to the radio, and the radio will now send that information to your central station. That's all done via a web-based interface, so makes it very clean, very easy, and very, very fast. All of the radios also have and accept a key switch input, so it works with any panel. We provide a no-charge application, which you see here, simply shows armed and disarmed. What you need is a key switch input, and you need an armed output. And what that service allows you to do is to give your customer some additional capabilities from using these radios, which again allows you to sell up from a monthly fee to include a couple of dollars for including the arm disarm application. Now I'll talk a little bit about the Connect radio, which is the white radio. We have them done in various colors, so it's easy to identify what radio does what. This again is a great takeover tool. It's upgradable. It allows us to upgrade not only a Napco panel to interactive services, but a Honeywell panel and a DSC panel. It allows us to upload and download those panels. Here we just kind of depict some of the products. We work with a very large number, if not most all of the Honeywell panels. We upload and download using this radio to a Honeywell panel. It's extremely fast. It's probably 5 or 6 times faster than using a Honeywell radio. DSC is a smaller number of panels, but a lot of people use it just because we can upload and download those panels. Napco, obviously you get a lot of advantage by using a Napco panel because it is our panel. We didn't have to put this on the bus. You're typically taking 2 for power, 2 for telco, and the 4-wire bus or 2 for data to the radio. And there's some minor radio programming that is done, panel selection, keypad selection, and allows us to go on some of these other panels and operate them and give you a virtual keypad, give you text and email notifications. And this Connect radio is going to be available later next month. This is just kind of a slide here that shows you and depicts the 3 different keypads or 3 different manufacturers that we work on from a virtual keypad standpoint. Honeywell, DSC, and Napco certainly. We do a lot of functionality with these. A lot of people have found that it's very easy to go back and add a Connect radio to an older Honeywell panel where Total Connect wasn't even available. So it allows you to upgrade and also allows you to continue to maintain communication with the control panel by allowing uploading and downloading to a Honeywell or a DSC panel through the Connect radio using either Compass or your DLS software. We have a C series, which is the Connect, and we have a Z series. The difference between those 2 products is the Z has Z-Wave capability. This kind of just depicts the Honeywell and what the Honeywell keypad looks like on your smartphone or your tablet application. SMS notification, that's SMS notification, email notification on any panel event. And we're currently promoting a more of a smart business type application. We have features like door held open too long. You can even do things like video openings, video closings, and You have a full virtual keypad. This radio, a Connect radio, is also a dual path radio. That means dual path with IP and also another path being Wi-Fi. So over on the top right-hand corner of the radio, you can actually add a Wi-Fi module. It's about $45 and not have to run a hard connection back to your network. So it makes it very easy from an installation standpoint. These radios sell for about $129. So if you do your rebate, they net out at about $29.95. And then you still get your full upload and download on those panels that this product works on and is verified for. This just kind of goes the same thing, shows us a little bit about what the DSC look is. And those looks of those keypads actually mimic the full keypad and all the buttons on the keypad that you see, as you see here with the DSC and the tablet that's being held. And again, they net out at $29.95. I don't know that there's any anybody that's competitive with that price out there for a product that has so much capability. And that cost of that monthly service, not including the Z-Wave, is $6.95. That's unlimited signals, unlimited uploads and downloads. That's notification, email and text, unlimited, and virtual keypad. So that's quite a competitive bargain today. Today, adding that to your commercial application, your smart business, to increase the RMR that we're getting from a commercial customer, not necessarily a resident, I mean, certainly could be a residential customer. It's designed for residents. But what we're finding is there's a lot of pressure in the residential market. So moving these concepts into the small business so we can actually utilize getting more revenue, more reoccurring revenue from a business application. The more people I see today, they're doing more business or more commercial than they are residential. And that's because you've got a lot of Simply Smart. You got a lot of companies. I was in the Lowe's the other day. They had a big end cap for AT&T, selling AT&T at a Lowe's store. So there's a lot of pressure residentially today. So using these features to sell commercially is extremely important. And this, from a smart business tool, you know when somebody closed, you know who closed. You have a video on alarm. We have just introduced the doorbell cam this week. So there are a lot of options here today. All of our cameras that we use that work in the entire iBridge smart business application. We're not really talking about those today, but what they all have is a stick, a memory stick. So the camera actually has a memory stick instead of sending that information off to an NVR. It's very, very cost effective to do it that way. So if you want to send your customer an email or a text message that the system has been armed, especially when they have more stores. We have a number of chain stores today that we're doing specific applications for that even incorporate access control and allow them to change access control cards or fobs and add users through the application. That's another thing as well. For the users, you can maintain, from a business standpoint, you can maintain user codes, so you can have user code management, and you can do, the end user does all their SMS and email notifications themselves, so you don't have to do that for them. It's very, very self-explanatory. This just talks a little bit about the Z-Wave, and it just kind of goes over everything that I went over before, but it incorporates Z-Wave. I have a lot of people today who will actually put in a Connect radio, not even have an alarm control panel, because they want to do a remote cottage or a remote cabin, and they want to have thermostat control. So they put in a Connect radio onto with a Z-Wave thermostat, and now where they didn't have internet, which you don't have to control those Z-Wave devices, and you actually have your application, which allows you to control the temperature or turn on lights or do any Z-Wave type application without even having a control panel. So there's a lot of flexibility and capability here that is available. You just have to kind of think of the applications. This is just kind of our last slide to, it's kind of a 5-in-1. It's a universal dual radio, supports all of the top brands of Honeywell, DSC, and Napco, for full virtual keypad, smart app, notifications, full based SMS and MMS notifications, and Z-Wave control. Great product, $29.95. At the end of the day or less. One of the biggest things today, and one of the places where you have the opportunity to grow your business and be more profitable, and certainly grow your business from an RMR standpoint, is FIRE. In the POTS lines going away today are a big reason for the addition of FIRE radios to FIRE systems. Years ago, it was nobody really used radios. They used it as a backup. We used 2 phone lines. Well, today, phone lines are going away. So FIRE radios are a very, very big part of the migration from POTS to an alternative. We now have the LTE available, and this just kind of depicts your LTE with your dual antennas. What we're designed with code compliance in mind. So everything that we've done is to fit these radios to specific applications. We work with, and it's not listed here, but 2007, that was the old 200 seconds. I don't know that there's any place in the country yet that still uses NFPA 2007. Most of the country is on 2010 or 2013 today. What you see, 2010 is a 5-minute check-in. Ohio just recently went from 5 minutes to 60 minutes, and they went to 2016. So they jumped 2013 completely. You see 2013 is 60 minutes as well, and dual path is a 6-hour check-in. We actually check in IP. When we say dual path, again, IP every 3 hours and cellular every 3 hours. So you get your dual path check-in. 2016, the biggest thing about 2016 is they went from the UPS that's required for the router and the modem from 24 hours to 12 hours in a dual path type situation. We have a number of compliances: UL 864 9th edition, NFPA 72, the various years, UL 1610, 985, 1023, California State Fire Marshal, Fire Department of New York, which requires dual path only, and then your LA Fire Department. And those are all available, and they're available online on our site if you needed to get a copy of any of those. Keeping in mind that I mentioned before, the radios themselves are 12 or 24 volt. That spans whatever application you may have and whatever fire alarm control panel you may have, making it a very flexible radio, primary or backup. What some people will do in areas where an AHJ is requiring a dual path, they may use a radio as primary and a phone line as backup, or vice versa. What they also may do is they may take 2 separate radios. It may sound a little redundant, but putting dual path radios on, putting an AT&T radio and a Verizon radio, and having 2 radios on a panel, if you were in a 1-hour check-in, you'd have 2 accounts for $11.95 each. Well, if you have 2 phone lines, those phone lines are somewhere between $50 and probably $70 each, which is either $100 to $140. So you're significantly less, even with 2 radios, than you would be. And those cases are not the norm, where you have an AHJ that's looking for dual path. There are also other options as well. You have 3 inputs on the radio. In other words, you have your input for fire, you have your input for trouble, you have your input for supervisory, and you have 5 outputs to trip various points or zones on your fire panels to put your fire panel into a trouble condition if you had a supervisory issue with the radio or other specific issues. We have sole path radios and we have dual path radios. We also have radios with or without power supply. So if a radio with a power supply, which we sell, about 20% of all of our radios come with power supply. 80% of our radios are sold in the low current draw version with simply a plastic radio. The value of that is, like I said earlier, you're not having to run conduit, you're not having to have a dedicated AC circuit, you're not going to a more expensive radio with a power supply in it. You can compare these radios at $139 with quite often sometimes radios that are $240 and up from the competitors, and then you have to have the dedicated AC circuit, and then you have to pipe to that. And there's a lot of time and labor involved in that, which time and labor is expense, in addition to the extra equipment, the cost of the equipment, and the cost of the dedicated circuit. So powers directly off of those radios, powered directly off without power supply, off the fire alarm control panel. Easiest and fastest to install. You can certainly install this in less than an hour, but I'm talking about an hour with putting some pipe, conduit, a 4-square on the wall, and mounting this radio to a 4-square, running your wire to the radio, and testing. You can literally install this radio and be done with the installation component of this radio in under an hour. And this just talks again a little bit about the 71 mils. No external power supply or standby batteries required because it's drawing its power off of the control panel. People say sole path, and what I often find, and even AHJ sometimes, as time goes on, more and more people get educated to this. But yeah, we all know that a phone line a fire alarm control panel takes 2 phone lines, and for decades they've gotten 2 phone lines. This kind of changed in 2007. We started accepting fire radios, and that's when you had the 200-second check-in. Well, 200-second check-in, you got a radio that's actually pinging every 3 minutes the tower. And if we failed in 200 seconds, you were going to get a supervisory. So as time has changed, so have the supervisory time. So now, in most cases, supervisory time has come to be an hour. So we send the signals to the tower several times during an hour to ensure that, in fact, we're communicating regularly with the tower. These radios, because we're sending, your fire alarm control panel is still sending its daily test. In the new NFPA 72 2016, when your state accepts that, 2 phone lines, actual phone lines, and in many cases, AHJs today are not accepting phone lines, but AHJs, if they follow the letter of the code, NFPA 72 2016, they will require a check-in literally every, I believe it says here, check-in at least every hour. That's your cell radios, but your actual landlines will have to check in every 6 hours. So you'll actually be, if you're using a phone line, and of course a lot of the legacy type panels, don't do that. But we're talking about a new installation, so that's something to consider. Sole path replaces a sole path radio replaces 2 landlines. I often see sometimes where somebody says sole path. Okay, this radio replaces a line. What, you have to continue to use a POTS line on the second line. That's not the case. This radio replaces 2 landlines, and that's because of the supervision that we have from these radios. We have a signal sent and received every hour to the non. Okay, POTS lines are going away. Well, that's certainly the reason why we're in a hurry. We have places all over the country today which are taking the POTS lines away. They give you very little notice that your POTS lines are going away. Obviously, if you've been doing this for some time, you know that POTS lines are harder to get. They're more expensive. There's what's called POTS line retirement. We know that specific vendors like Verizon have actually sent out communications to their employees that they cannot, under penalty of termination, repair phone lines. Now, that may happen that they do in some cases, but the word is we're not repairing phone lines. So that old copper is going away. We also know that copper, and you get a lot of noise on the copper today, and more people are having trouble from a communication standpoint. We had one particular case where a bank had in New York had over $50,000 in service during a 1-year period working on old phone lines. And that's as a cause of the problem. Every time they had a problem with the phone line, the alarm company had a supervisory. They had to come out. They were billing the banking center over $50,000 a year. They had quite a few locations, and this was happening in many places. But you can see how the cost starts to add up by going to a radio and eliminating the phone line problems is a significant benefit. Of course, we replace the Soul Path replaces 2 phone lines on any control panel, 12 or 24 volts, installs in less than an hour. Easy to standardize on Soul Path cellular or dual path cell IP, reporting again to any central station. Now, when we talk about sending IP to the central station, we actually send IP to the central station to a SureGuard IP receiver. So keep that in mind. And we are SureGuard 3 through 5 certified and UL listed for. This kind of just talks a little bit about FireLink communicators. Suggested dealer price $139.95. That's down to $39.95 with that trade-up incentive. We have a lot of competitors, and $229 is a pretty cheap price. So you could probably be much higher than that. But if you had 500 communicators, and you could take this down to 100 communicators and say there was, 20% of that. So even 100 communicators is $20,000 a year in savings. That's hardware. Not to mention the additional savings from not having to run that dedicated AC circuit, not having to have the enclosure over the transformer, not counting the man hours it takes to do all that and run that wire. And in many cases, you have to pipe quite a long way to get to that dedicated AC circuit or get to a place where the radio actually works. So there's a significant amount of savings. You could probably easily double that 95,000 in what you're actually saving if you're putting in, and then even if you're putting in 50 radios, that's still, you're like $9,500. And I start talking about what an employee costs, or what a truck costs, or what it costs. When you can save an employee's salary, put on another employee for using this product, that's just a phenomenal amount of savings and profitability that you're adding, because now you can be doing more installs, you can be doing more upgrades, you can be doing more aggressive selling to customers to change. This just talks here about if you've got a customer who's got 2 POTS lines, and let's say they average $130 for 2 POTS lines, that's $1,560 a year. One radio, if I said that the radio, which is only $11.95 for a 1-hour check-in, and you added $50 a month to the customer's bill, that's $600. Let's say you're already charging them, if they're already your customer, you're already charging them $45. But let's say you go to $95. They're already paying the $45. So you're only charging them an additional $50. They're saving $80 per installation. So in actuality, they're saving $940 per installation And if they have more than one site, there's significant savings. We start to look at chain stores like you look at things like McDonald's or Wendy's or Chick-fil-A's or Taco Bell's or chain stores of any kind, and you start to get into the thousands of sites, and all of a sudden now that's not $940 a year, that's 1,000 sites, that's $94,000 a year in savings by going to a radio in lieu of POTS lines. And again, the POTS lines are becoming terribly unreliable. And so don't get hung up on the old phone lines. I know a lot of people tend to cling to the old copper. These products today are incredibly reliable and really and truly will help you sleep at night and add profit to your company and increase your RMR. Going from that $45 a month to what I typically see is $80 or $85 a month when you add a cell radio to replace those two phone lines adds a tremendous amount of RMR to your business. We also have, and just to go through the radios as well, we have the dual path, and that's the part number there. And these are the plastic enclosure versions. And this is the Verizon part numbers, but you have the version in the metal can. Some places like Houston require it in a metal can. No power supply, but just in a metal can because they're afraid of the plastic melting for some reason. But they require it in a metal can. So then you have the power supply version in the metal can. They typically sell for about $189. When you add the I to it, that means it's a dual path unit. And we also have, and though they're not as often used as some of my competitors, we do have 3 antenna options. We have a 30-foot, a 50-foot, and a 75-foot antenna. That's a marine antenna. It's been matched to this Starlink radio, and it gives you between 7 to 10 dB bump in signal. And you can get on the ComNet site, go to SLE management, and you can tell the dB level of your radios, and then you can match that up directly to the number of flashes that you have on each radio. Just to kind of go through it, we have Intrusion series radios, commercial fire, soul, and dual path series radios, and the connected home and business radios with the communicator and the services and the Z-Wave option. So there are a tremendous number of options. In addition to this, we also have commercial radios that have a 300 second, they actually do 200 seconds for banks and jewelry stores and UL-listed commercial Berg applications. So we have those as well. They're in a metal can. And I really appreciate the time the opportunity to talk to you today about Starlink. And my information here, Dave Sheffy. You can call me if you have any questions, 734-516-1587. That's my cell. Or you can send me an email, and I'll be happy to get back to you if you'd like some more information. DSHEFFEY@napcosecurity.com. And if you have just some general information that you're looking for, you can go to www.napcosecurity.com/Starlink and get any information you want to directly from our website. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for attending. I hope this was worthwhile for you. Thanks.
All right, Dave, I did have a couple of questions that came in here. First one was, how much is the monthly service charge for your Berg radio?
A basic Berg radio, unlimited signals, unlimited uploads and downloads on an Napco panel is $595. There is, if you were looking to be a little bit more competitive, there's a $495 option that has a limited number of signals, but quite frankly, you don't send a lot of signals in a residential type application. You're not sending openings and closings. So using a $495 price is something I would probably do. It's not like you're connecting to a commercial application. Commercial applications where you have more uploads and downloads and maybe user code changes, different things, where you have openings and closings, I would use the 595 unlimited signals. Yeah.
Okay, great. Another question that came in, what if the new LTE radio doesn't work in parts of my market?
Well, it's again, if you've tried the LTE radio and you don't get a good strong signal strength, I necessarily wouldn't be the first to run out and grab a big antenna and spend $150 on an antenna. I would utilize the CDMA radios. There's 4.5 years back on those. If you're doing it in a fire application, it's a little easier too, because you're always going back on a yearly basis to do a fire inspection, service maintenance. So you're always going back, so it's easy to go back and change a radio later. Berg, it's a little bit more difficult to do that, but if you don't have any options, we still continue to sell the CDMA and 3G, 4G AT&T radios, so they are still an option for you. Unfortunately, other manufacturers no longer have those as options.
Okay. Last question. How do I get my $100 service credit for upgrading to a StarLink radio?
Oh, good question. You actually go to the Napco Security website, and what you'll see is in the early slide you saw a little free ad, and if you're looking at StarLink radios, you will see that free ad. It's actually a button, and you press that button, and that takes you to a location that gives you complete instructions as to how to fill out the form and where to submit the form at Napco. You can send it in electronically, or you can send it in through the mail. And what you're doing is you're putting the radio number on the form. It needs to be done within 30 days of activation. After that, it is limited. So you want to make sure you get it done quickly after activation, and that $100 gets applied directly to that radio number that you've submitted. And there's a form to fill out. And what I do if I'm using radios on a regular basis, I say print the form, pre-fill it out, make copies, and really the only thing you have to change is maybe the reason why you put in a StarLink radio, whether it was new construction or a takeover, or it was a POTS line conversion, or it was a radio upgrade, and the radio number itself. So just to make it as easy as possible to submit for you.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Dave. That does look like that's all the questions that we have for today. If you would like to review this presentation again or pass it along, we will have the recorded version of it posted very soon. You can find it by visiting psaeducation.com. Thank you very much to Dave Sheffy. His contact information is still posted here if you have more questions for him after this presentation. Please make sure you visit our website, that's psaeducation.com, to be sure that you're leveraging all that PSA has to offer. On our education page, you can access our future webinar events, this recording, educational offerings, and business solutions. This will conclude today's presentation. Thank you all so much, and thank you, Dave. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Julie.